As anything goes, hopefully you guys having a great and exceptional day. Today's word of the day is element. Element stands for a variety of things that that they go into a certain category. Great example, element is when somebody's making something great, like a cake, or they're making a pie, or they're making any sort of cuisine. Especially people have become way more creative nowadays, as much more people have tried to take their health way more seriously, which I commend everybody for doing that. And there's always different seasonings or different elements that they have to add to ensure that it tastes good and looks good all at the same time, and that the people that are eating it, including hopefully the chef, person cooking it, doesn't get sick or die. So that so paying attention to every single aspect of things and elements of things can always work out in your favor, for the most part at least. Today's quote of the day is by the Brat. She says, "I always like to come with stuff people don't expect me to. I like the element of surprise." And that's just one great thing, because especially the way a lot of people look nowadays, that's the way the Brat looked back in the day. Great example. If you've ever seen the Brat, the rapper, she had more of they would call back in the day, a tomboyish way that she dressed, the way that she wore her hair. And I actually liked it because she stood out being who she was. When you're living in your own truth, whether you agree with somebody's truth or not is irrelevant. But when you're living in your own truth, that's freedom. That's a mental freedom. There's all aspects of freedom. There's mental freedom, there's health freedom, there's physical freedom, and there's economic freedom. But she had that mental freedom being who she was. Like I always say, like back I'm an 80s baby. So back when I was big into music, big into listening to rappers, you had to sound different. You had to look different. That was the beautiful thing about that time frame. Your production had to be different. Your style had to be different. Like that was something that I can say. And you have certain artists nowadays that stick out and stand out, because most, like nowadays, it's so basic to just have a bunch of tattoos and piercings and multicolored rainbow hair. That's normal nowadays. So that's nothing special. That's nothing to lose too much sleep over. But I will say with all sincerity that, the Brat stood out because most female rappers at the time did not look like her. She had I believe she's from the south side of Chicago. I know she's from Chicago, but I believe it was, she had a south side of Chicago mentality, the way she dressed. And even as she got more mature and older, she evolved, and she still had her own style. Even when she was dressing differently, it wasn't just wearing the baggy clothes and things of that nature, or looking a little bit more feminine. She still had her own style. She still had, matter of fact, even something that I'm attracted to, because I like women. I believe she's homosexual, which is nothing wrong with that. But I like my women a lot more aggressive. That's why I've always been attracted to females from either the South or the East or Northeast, like the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Boston area, Massachusetts area, because women are more straightforward and direct. I'm from the DMV, where you have a small group of women who have that more direct and aggressive mindset and mentality. But I like them to be straightforward and aggressive with it. Or women, it's been my experience, women from California and Texas, and Florida, way more straight up with it, maybe way more aggressive with it. Gonna let you know what it is. You don't have to, like where I'm from, there's a lot of mind games, and when you're straightforward, you're considered to be a jerk or arrogant or pompous or whatever the case may be. So that's the thing that was the beautiful thing about the Brat. She stood out. She still stands out to this day, but she stood out. You can just look at the different artists from my time frame, and I can go from rock music to rap music. So the rock artists, so Kid Rock stood out from Limp Bizkit. They both had a sound of they could sing. They sing or rap to rock music and to hip hop music if they wanted to, but they still had different styles, the way that they dressed, the way that their appearance on stage. It was a whole two different dynamics, and that was the beauty of those bands. Korn, Papa Roach, Rage Against the Machine, could sing, could rap, to rock music and hip hop music, but still had that great differences about them. So that's what made it all great music, POD. And then I could go to rap music. Bone Thugs and Harmony was way different than the Wu-Tang Clan. Wu-Tang Clan was way different than Mobb Deep. Mobb Deep was way different than the Alcoholics. The Dog Pound was way different than Dilated Peoples, even though they came from the same city of Los Angeles. You would have never known that the Dilated Peoples was from LA, until until they started repping Los Angeles and things of that nature, because they had a different sound compared to like artists from West Side Connection to NWA, Dog Pound, you know, the list goes on and on. Same thing in Atlanta. You had the Dungeon Family, you had Outkast, you had Ludacris, you had Lil Jon and East Side Boys, you know, the list goes, you know, Lil Jeezy, Young Jeezy, you know, Nas in New York, way different than Jay-Z, Memphis Bleak, you know, State Property, Beanie Siegel was way different from the Journalist and whatnot. Most people, I don't think they know who the rapper Journalist is, but way different than Eve, way different than Major Figures. So they were all from, you know, way different than Will Smith, all from Philadelphia, but they all had different sounds, you know. Same thing with Nelly and the St. Lunatics. They was way different than Chingy from St. Louis. You know, Tech Nine was from Kansas City, Missouri, and Kansas City, Kansas. But he had a totally different sound compared to the artists that were coming out of St. Louis. So same thing with Twister from Chicago. Him and Do or Die, they had similarities, but they weren't the same. You know, so it's just like when you look at that, Detroit, Royce da 5 Nine sounded way different than Eminem and way different than D12, Esham. So I know I'm going off on a tangent here, but the moral of the story is, compared to most artists today, their thing was they wanted to not only be successful, but they wanted to stand out. No Limit, Cash Money, both from the same city of New Orleans, both sound two different sounds. All right. Same thing with UGK and Little Flip in Houston, you know, different sounds. All the artists in Houston have their own sound. So, and I think that's how it's supposed to be just in life. I'm using entertainment as an example, but I think that's how it's supposed to be in life. You're supposed to want to stand out to be who you are. Now, a lot of times people stand out too much to where they stand out to the point where they look ridiculous, but we're all supposed to be different. You know, we're all supposed to have our own little style. That's why I always tell people, I don't want to be like you. You shouldn't want to be like me. You got to be who you are at the end of the day. Too many people want to be like, the way I dress is not how most people dress, and that's a good thing. A lot of people dress how I don't dress. That's a good thing. That's what makes this world a beautiful place to live in. That's what makes America a beautiful place to live in. We can all be different. We can be who we want to be. You know, we can stand out. We can date how we want to date, marry how we want to marry, not marry at all, have kids, not have kids. You know, we have these options. So being able to do these things makes it a great place to live. It makes life worth living. You know, if I had to live in a place where everybody had to look the same, everybody had to be the same, everybody thought the same, it would be a boring world to live in, you know. So anyways, on that note, do the great thing for things. Like, share, and subscribe. Have a great day. Make money moves so you're going to live like a fool.